Hello and welcome to another AGS Inspire Flipped Masterclass. This week's focus is behaviour management, and specifically managing that real tricky 2% of learners who cause us the vast majority of problems in the school. What we're going to look at is how we deal with extreme behaviour in the classroom, incidents that may potentially need to use on call, where students might blow up in the classroom, or the red mist comes down, or they storm out of the class, and how we can look at dealing with those a lot more effectively so that we don't escalate the situation even further. First thing to remember is you are the adult and you are the professional, and I think we need to remember that, and we're not to get emotionally attached to behaviour incidents and to get embroiled into kind of arguments or standoffs or trading kind of insults and those sorts of things. We need to make sure that we take a step back, we deal with it as an adult, and we remember that the students in our care are young people. They're not emotionally intelligent, or not as emotionally intelligent as we are as adults, and they're not used to dealing with things potentially in an adult way. And a lot of the behaviours that they are exhibiting are learnt behaviours from home. So we need to make sure that we demonstrate and we model real positive adult behaviour in the way that we deal with these tricky situations and confrontations. Right, we're going to go through some various steps that will help us, when these situations present themselves in our classroom. The first one is shouting, and whenever you speak to students in any type of student voice about what makes a good teacher or what they don't like about teachers or whatever it is, they always talk about shouting, and they always say that's something that really turns them off. They really don't like it. It doesn't do anything for relationships or respect. And actually, a lot of them, think it's very funny, and they kind of laugh at it when a member of staff has really lost it with one member, one member of the class, and they're shouting, and the rest think it's a bit of it's an audience to kind of to laugh at. All it does is it creates that kind of fight or flight mentality, and whenever you've been shouted at before, you'll know what your reaction has been like, whether you've wanted to shout back or whether you wanted to kind of bolt out the door. And we need to remember that that is what students are going to do, and when we get into those situations, then we wonder why students then shout back, or we wonder why they then decide that that's it, they've had enough and they're going to walk out of the room. So really, it's a big no-no. I think schools have done a lot of work over the last few years to reduce the amount of shouting that's gone on, and that's been fantastic. But it really does get students' backs up straight away. And also, if you're someone that shouts quite a lot, then you haven't got that in your armoury to kind of suddenly raise your voice when you really need to make a point, in those odd occasions, because actually shouting is a daily occurrence for you, and the students kind of expect it. Then it's nothing any different. Right, next is biting back, and this is something that is sometimes very hard to do, and it's when a student potentially leaves the room, and on the way out the door they kind of they say. They shout something into the room, or to you, or to a student, or they do something that really kind of hits a personal note, with you. And I think we need to remember to stop, not to bite back. And it's sometimes very tempting to go after them and to have the final word, or to say something sarcastic as they leave the room. And it's the type of things as adults we would do, with other adults if we were involved potentially in an argument, and you would think of a clever comment to say. But we're professionals, we've got a situation here with a child who's potentially got emotionally charged up, they've lost it, the red mist has come down, they've said something, give them that space. Don't feel you have to have the last word, let them go, and be professional about it, because all it does is when you say something back to them, the young person then gets even more emotionally charged up. They inflame it even more, and it's just like throwing more petrol on the flames. It doesn't need to happen, and we need to make sure we keep our distance from that. Next is dealing with the here and now, and this is where we talk about whatever incident has happened in the classroom. We need to deal with the incident and deal with the behaviour, and not deal with the student. And that's very hard to do sometimes, but it's important that we deal with the behaviour and not bring up a lot of previous, because when you start to bring up previous and you say you always shout, or you never listen, or this happened last week as well, it then starts to become quite nasty and like a personal attack on that student, and students feel that, and students then have that opinion that they never like me, or they just don't like me, because all the time you are picking on them as an individual rather than their behaviour. So what we need to do here is really focus on the behaviour, deal with the behaviour. So if it's shouting out, you deal with the fact that they have shouted out, and you talk about why it's inappropriate to shout out. You're not talking about them as a person. You're not talking about what happened yesterday, the week before, or the last 3 weeks, because that becomes personal. So deal with the here and now, and when you start to think about it in those terms in your mind, it crystallises it, and then actually it also becomes a lot easier because you focus on the issue, not on the person. Secondary behaviour is also very interesting because this is caused when a student has potentially lost it, or the red mist has come down, and for instance, if they have then decided to storm out of the room, what will happen is that something will have triggered that, so some behaviour will have triggered that, and that's what we need to focus on, talking about the here and now. But what happens is, as they then kind of decide to storm out, what they tend to do sometimes is they kick the chair over, they walk out, they'll say something negative, to a member of staff or to another student, they'll kick the bin or slam the door or throw their bag, and it's very tempting sometimes as a member of staff to then pick up on all these secondary behaviours. And then you go after them and you say, right, that's it, you've kicked the chair, you've kicked the bin, you've said this to me, you've slammed the door, and we're suddenly escalating this situation way out of control, and we're now dealing with all these incidents, and the student then feels it's an attack on them, and then they don't know how to backtrack from that or to step back from it, and we get embroiled in this situation that just escalates and escalates. What we need to do is understand that these students are not as emotionally intelligent as us, they don't know how to step back, and when they lose it, they will lose it, and then these things will happen. We need to forget about all those little misdemeanors, concentrate on the situation and focus on what happened, what was the trigger for the issue, and then they've gone, they've walked out. Let's deal with that rather than adding all these extras on top, that then becomes a serious, a big situation, because you're then writing down, oh, and they did this, and they did this, and they did this. We know they've lost it, that's enough. Right, let's concentrate on getting that student back to a situation where they can be learning rather than out of the classroom. An important step in all this is really what happens next. And for far too long, I think, as teachers, not in this school but across the world, we tend to kind of ask students, why have you done this? Tell me, why have you done this? The students will not be able to tell you that. They will not have an answer. All right, because they're not as emotionally intelligent as us. They won't be able to actually deconstruct why they have suddenly blown up 30 seconds earlier. They're not in the right state of mind to be able to do that at that time anyway. And even if they were, they might not want to tell you because it might be embarrassing anyway to say, well, I shouldn't have done this and this because. So they're not going to say it. They're not going to tell you. And generally what happens is they say, I don't know, or no, they don't say anything. And that kind of winds teachers up even more because we haven't got the answer we wanted to. We're not going to get that answer, so don't ask the question. Right? Forget what happened in terms of going through, you did this, you did this, you did. They know what they've done, and you know what they've done. Verbalizing it even further doesn't make any sense because it doesn't get us anywhere. All we do is we get more wound up when we go back through it in our minds, and they get more wound up. All right, so let's just forget that. We know what's happened. Let's deal with what's going to happen next. So this is what's happened. Okay, we're outside now. Right, because of what's happened, this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to happen next. This is the consequence to the actions. You are going to either go to a room removal, or you're going to go off with another teacher, or I'm going to give you 2 minutes to calm down and bring you back in. But let's focus on what's going to happen next so we can move forward, rather than going back retrospectively and trying to look at all those little areas and look for the question of why, because you're not going to get it. Following on from that, we then need to rehearse the reintroduction. So when we're talking to students about, I'm going to bring you back into class, we need to rehearse how that's going to happen with them. So we need to take them through those steps. And we need to make it very, very clear and support them in this. Because remember, we've got a student here who's potentially lost it in front of their own peers. They may have been upset, they may have been wound up. We need to be able to rehearse with them how it's going to work. So we may say, right, I'm going to bring you back in. I want you to walk to your desk. You're not going to say anything to anybody. You're going to sit down. You're going to open your book. We're currently working through this piece of text here, or we're going to go on to these questions here. This is what I want you to do. I don't want you to talk to whoever it was at the back who you had the argument with, or I'm going to move you to the front to sit near me, and you're going to talk them through very, very calmly all those steps, making sure that they understand it and giving them the opportunity to ask any questions. Because when they go in with you, they need to understand and they need to have worked it through in their mind exactly what's going to happen and that it's going to be okay. So that's very, very important to do, rather than just saying to a student, right, do you think you're ready to come back in? Yes, all right, in you go. and then something happens within 30 seconds and we say, hang on, what's going on? Well, if we haven't supported them in that reintroduction, then there's a high chance of that happening. And lastly, we need to repair the relationship. This is key long term. And going back to our first slide about us being adults and the professionals, we shouldn't expect the students to come and knock on our door and say, sir, I'm really, really sorry, and open their heart, about why they're sorry. A lot of times students will only apologise to us because they've been told to. So therefore they're not really doing it because they are really sorry. They're doing it because someone has said, I think you need to go and say sorry. And they'll come and they'll say, sorry for what happened yesterday, or sorry. And that'll kind of be it. What we need to do as the adult is to go and repair that relationship and to go and speak to the student. And to let them know that we're okay, that I'm in charge and I'm an adult, I'm not holding a grudge. And actually, what happened yesterday, but we're okay and we're going to move forward with it. And that doesn't have to happen straight away, and it's best if we leave that maybe 24, 48 hours. But then to go and seek out the student, potentially in another lesson when you're in your non-contact time, to speak to them outside and just to say, look, just to let you know, we're okay, me and you, and next lesson we're going to do this and everything's going to be fine. I don't want that to happen again, and we've already spoken about that, but we're going to leave that in the past now. And this is what we're going to be doing, and I just want to let you know I value your opinion in the class, and we can work forward from here. And that's really important because the students will not have the courage to do that. They won't have the emotional intelligence to come and do that with us. And as the adults and the professionals, we're going to have to work with this child for the next few months and the next few years. If we don't do that and we don't do anything to repair that that relationship, then we're probably always going to be the ones that are complaining about, well, this student does this, and he never does this in my lesson, or she never does this. We need to make sure we build that relationship. We make sure that we have a classroom relationship with that student where it's positive, where it can move forward, and where they know that you are giving them that mutual respect and that unconditional respect to move forward, and that what happened, but it's in the past. It was a mistake, and we're okay to move forward. So I think that's really, really important. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully that takes you through a lot of those steps and a lot of tools really in your armoury to be able to deal with those incidents when they do happen, and to be able to then move forward and move past that, and to focus on reintegrating the students and building that relationship again, so that the students feel that they can work with you. And above everything else, we're adults. We know that these are young people who are not mature as us, who sometimes are demonstrating learnt behaviour that they've seen from home, and that it's our job really to model that real adult behaviour and professional behaviour, so that we can develop them as young people as well. Okay, thank you very much.